OKFM 101.7.
Yebedi nkomo na ene story bi a ewa ha na anu ada ena mote se eye GRA ehunu se yem petroleum yedi hu dwuma wo man mu ICOMS wo mo jeto ni bi mo man ye revenue tanks ahodo no ye kogumu a wo mo kofa no so no ese wo mo sutua to na wo mo hwe nyina no hwan na wo watch the watchman ewe se bibia akọ enti GRA contact adwumako bi e fra mo SML na ene SML no kra wo mabu akunta with the inquisitor se sika wo munya free mu a chese ebeye mfaso a bro de dada no ewo no 12 billion Ghana cedis from downstream petroleum activities na nipa bi so koye eho pre anas akorsen awuni manase awuni ekoye report bi ba yes o ni send dem wo mo kra no ye mom contract 10 years kodu o na 10 years wo mo se dey be 5 years eno kra de company na si wo mo wo court ntinya no ho asem na ye beka na emom ene ye ba bebie enkomo no mu na ye ba bia revelation ya ba se wo mo kra no atimi amagana in excess of 12 billion Ghana cedis na ye di ho enkomo na oni a ene ba twen enkomo ye Atik Mohammed bra Atik memoache
bejuzo bra kwame
na boko de
nyame dia chami na wonso
boko pa na wote bibi se enkamfo se de manasa zure mu kotwero ye na president ka se KPMG4 enhwehwemu na omugusu hwehwemu bepem nei na ukohunu se the inquisitor the story about say GRA SML deal gave Ghana over 12 billion in excess from downstream petroleum activities. Eto saying
that's it nidi kan ma mincha weti for nyina na media size my story many editire
OKFM 101.
Because look, BBC there. Anything that has to do with revenue mobilization, I am very much interested because as an economist, the social economy and the inadequate revenue receipts are in any the ever increasing expenditure are buying yet. And she said, revenue some be but here. Obia who has an interest in how the economy is run there, you should be interested in how these issues are dealt with and now it's saying. Until Medican can say, look, there are some key questions I say beside you. Now your young answers are then those answers would guide conversation on this particular issue. Now some of the questions are me beside me and when she move to get the answers. And he said, did Ghana get value for money in that kind of investment in SML?
Yes.
The contractor are buying SML, SINE, it involved some cost. Say, Omuye Jumani Ria, say, Yetu Omuka, because they use their money to invest in the technology and the equipment. And now, as Omuye Jumani Ria, government has to pay them through some arrangements. It's a question now, every reasonable economist would ask and say, in such arrangement, did Ghana get value for money? Two, was there a need for the servicer, contracting SML for say Omunyano? And the most important of all is Omuba, what has been the revenue levels for GRA in comparison to the levels before the contracting of SML? These are three critical questions that should guide any conversation around the SML deal. And I say, and I spoke to the first two. But the last one about what were the pre and post levels of revenue. Now, as Obia are very interested in this matter, I say, I just don't speak to issues without having the full complement of information. Otherwise, you can sound stupid. The only facts are guide the kind of contributions you make. And I've come across some documents from the GRE and even ICOMS. It says if you do a calculation of, in average terms, how much na buying enya from the petroleum downstream revenue before the introduction of SML. Now, the two what government has been receiving ever since SML came now, you can't help but to be pleased. Say, Sajumana, Jerry for the share SML phone seminar. And what Bampa Soke say? Because 12 billion Ghana cedis, by all accounts, is good money anywhere in the world. Which has a make a way. And let's even use the current exchange rate, for example. In current exchange rate terms, that's about $1 billion. Because I for now between May of 2020 and by the end of 2023, what I say?
$1 billion.
Yes.
And SML for that to me, Adiama Ghana.
In fact, it is a little more than 1 billion. I'm rounding up now.
Oh, okay.
And I'm using even current exchange rate too. So imagine those days now, exchange rate stable. You would have been talking about almost $2 billion. But we have additional revenue to the GRE because of the activities of you can say SML. Look, Obibeka said, correlation is not causation. And economists can perform data analysis. So, because after the introduction of SML, revenues have shot up. And revenues no cost. But you see, if a trend is consistent, you cannot tell me, say, even though we have not done any empirical study yet, but common sense should tell you, say, it is the activity, if there is an intervention, now, before and after the intervention, there is a change in an outcome. Reasonably, without even doing any scientific study and an empirical study, you can comfortably say, look, this intervention is partly responsible. But I'm saying, for you to even establish causality, there has to be some study. But whether causality or correlation, the most important thing is that intervention, GRE for a year by way of contracting SML for it has resulted in some increase in the outcome, which is the revenue. And whether you are looking at causality or correlation, there is still a relationship between the introduction of SML and the increase in revenue. And to me, like I said, the question I was asking is, has there been a change in the levels? And with information I mean, it tells you that there has been a significant increase in revenue levels. What you must hear. And look, nobody can tell me, and yes, values are increasing. Because if they are able to get your taxable volumes to increase, well, you see, sometimes from our mind, analysis. Bibiba, nagidi, I can try. Nasabi, depending on say Obia. Now you can ya say Nipanejuma. But I'm Tubu you would notice that before SML came, this in an era, there was a difficulty in having verifiable and accurate taxable volumes of petroleum.
Now, Angadik,
yes.
Mami Musa question. Before now SML Maya, you need 12 billion in SS. I am fast what you are in near the actual mark of a Simono. Says can I find
exactly. Every Obia or the petroleum downstream needs, and your Becca said, we've had situations of diversions and under declaration of volumes. Because one the BBC, Bulk Distribution Company, BD, refined products, but they pay tax based on the volumes that are declared. And yes, sir.
Yes.
Now, toward year, and you'll be an individual.
The
lesser the volumes, the lesser the taxes they pay, and the more profits they make. And they have every motivation and incentive not to declare the right volumes. What is here? And can you now necessary be a checking whether the volumes that the BDCs are declaring and the volumes at the various depots, no, and only the accurate depots are air taxable, no. There was no system like that in place. And see, you would find that there were situations whereby, in some cases, there would be discrepancies between the records as held by MPA, records as produced by the depots, and records as produced by the BDCs. What are there? But SML bar, they are able to do the reconciliation of all these records. And see, if a BDC imports, you declare the quantities at the point of entry. And between the point of entry and the depot, the volumes. Somebody will do the audit to reconcile whether the depots, the records at the depots, any near would buy because would buy. But for items, what is here? Until somebody is able to track and says, look, near we import here, any near depots, the records don't match. Until if obit me yes, then eventually, or the right records now, it means and then get the right taxable volumes now. It means GRA is going to get the right amount of tax. What is here? In between the point of importation, depots, and the rest of it, and now, you can say, GRA 4 are contracted SML to make sure that doesn't happen. And that would mean more taxable volumes and more taxes. It's as simple as that. And before SML, they were not able to track all of these. And government was losing money, revenue, because you were not getting the right taxable volumes. And media, if anybody cares to be thorough, if anybody cares to be analytical, and to be patriotic, you cannot come to any conclusion but to say that Ejumana Edima SML for no. And what Bamfaso? And like I said before, and more be ankaza na other no muntiminha. Everybody recognizes. Say revenue assurance monitoring. It involves huge investments. Nigeria for AB or money African. So they always outsource it to a third party. And I've said this several times. Said this is not the first time Nigeria for ASRD. And I cited an example when it came to communication service tax and VAT on communication. Now, and also, it dealt with volumes. So it was difficult for them to track in real time the communication minutes, Ghana for Kasa. So at every particular point in time, almost even can't tell you, oh, this year, you can say, this year, for example, you have to say 921. This is the number of call minutes Ghana for Kasa. They couldn't tell you. So they relied on CDRs, call data records, and they look, data now, they decide how many minutes they will declare for you. So
near any means be able to check it.
There'll be so GRA can say, look, let's get the first party with the requisite equipment to be able to tell us in real time the number of call minutes Ghana for Air Kasa. Because I don't know they are calculating on communication service tax near every talk tax, any VAT on communication. So any company pay friend is Super 4 Empire. Unfortunately, Super 4 did not dispense themselves creditably. But that does not obviate the need for revenue assurance monitoring. What you are here? Even though Ejumano but there was it doesn't mean that Nigeria didn't have the need for it. They had the need for it. What you are here? In the same way, the BR that deals with volumes, any tax whose receipt is dependent on volumes, you always need revenue assurance monitoring. What I say, and to say, and also depends on volumes. And a GRA 4, when he said, look, we were doing such things. And you need to make sure that the differences are ye lose no yes no ye bet me like there are no way of tracking such differences no. And on the SML buy and then say SML is not paid like whether we just like Subano ye bet you can be pay is based on performance. And the contract they sign with SML is a performance-based contract. How much you are able to discover, which would result in gains for GRA. No sooner I calculate it. What was there? And the media in new information.
Atik. Any maybe a manasa mobile say na GRA attempts to keep the akoma woman. It was a fallacy.
Oh, it was indeed. And they didn't take their time to read the service agreement they had with GRA had with SML. Case no according to me the major no.
Okay.
But anybody who cares to understand these things, it's all two documents do Susana now and two and kind here, you might end up making certain mistakes.
Me but say ya how to operations per the Ghana loses count.
Of course. Because the human was resulting in the discovery of more taxable volumes, which was giving Jerry more money. They say, diversions, the declarations, they'll go back to the same period. Look, Ghana for so. Say a human general honor, no, me.
Yeah.
So for the entirety of February, and now, Ghana for they should try and compare the pre-suspension revenue of GRA compared to time I can't so munjai jumano. Who difference I'll be So Sebi, who pairs them and force them and now you have issues. Would you to convince yourself, just wait after the suspension, try and compare before the suspension and during the suspension. NAFA volumes of liters are yet declared in my diary for, and the revenue diary made from that. And you would see, sir, there's definitely a difference. And that Juma, SML for air, it results in the discovery of more volumes, taxable volumes for that matter. Emma diary for a lot more revenue. If you are not convinced, just wait. Time I suspend you, revenues are there from petroleum downstream. It's to before you can't tell and you would see a difference. And the difference is not like 10 million liters. It is huge. You can say volumes of liters, which translates into huge Ghana city. You can say losses for the GRA, because if you are supposed to receive a certain amount of revenue, now when you receive it comes as a loss to you. What's that here? And to me, the period that this contract is being suspended, Abai is losing money.
Okay.
Now, so I see a need to carry the now, so we are deliberately inflicting the pain of losing revenue upon ourselves. I made the point, sir. What it doesn't hurt, say Abai because okay, but with the caveat, sir. If it turns out, sir, but if it turns out indeed the audit exonerates you continue, you take it as if it was one of the months.
Oh, okay. Okay.
What I say? That the government doesn't lose. If you say that now, if the audit comes and we have issues with you, we feel that you don't get paid for the period that the audit was ongoing. But if you say you are exonerated, then you continue as if you are still delivering on the terms of your contract. Government doesn't lose anything. If anything at all, government gains a lot. But it says that automatically yes suspended. If indeed it turns out that Abai is critical, what then would you say? It means deliberately the President's directive inflicted upon us a great deal of revenue loss, which you can't redeem. Once you've lost revenue, is it redeemable? What is that?
Okay. Okay, and yet, medals pa minim say we the running story. Bibi any a mess about on chain. It you appeal to government on this matter. Finally, and saying.
My appeal is that government should look at this from the 3 points which are in the form of questions that I asked. Lady kind, did government get value for money? Was there a need by GRA for revenue assurance monitoring the downstream? For which reason they needed a third party? And the last is, has it resulted in an increase in revenue levels for GRA or not? If government is to consider and I look objectively at these questions, Mijidi said they'll come to one conclusion, said, a Jumana or Muyeno, a Juma Esweni. And my member were in church when I was talking about Suba Koi and Zanka, Obibakazo, GRA phone to us in Jumane. Kelly GVG, a Jumana or Muya. Because government realizes that you need OB to be able to give you real-time data. What was here? And even though Suba messed up, they still had to get OB and OB to higher side to come and continue. They could have said that young version. But because government needs to have real-time data on the number of minutes Ghanaians are speaking at any particular point in time, another entity was brought in. And if revenue assurance in communication is not a problem, why should we think it's a problem in the petroleum downstream? Because our mafia is for those untiana. I think my advice is I earlier suggested that and can almost suspended. They should have, allowed them to continue with the caveat Amika. But the group and Pensubi my hope is that after the audit, Abayan would realize that look, it is in our collective interest we continue to monitor revenue in the petroleum downstream and even the upstream. Because the beer volumes, if your taxes and our revenue are dependent on volumes, you must have a special way of finding out you are really getting the right volumes. Because the right volumes give you the right taxes. If you are getting lower volumes, you are getting lower taxes. You must have a mechanism that shows that indeed you are getting the right volumes. Therefore, you are getting the right, amount of revenue.
Okay. But that's the Mirati. Bye. Ora Atik Mohammed and any tree and Kobo Efa and Semwa and who Emma or Mino.
OKFM 101.7.